Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very, very warm welcome. What day are we on? Wednesday. It's Tuesday, but you're seeing this on Wednesday. Are you confused? You will be. So welcome to Wednesday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. I want a further discussion about James Gunn's brand new Superman costume. There's no question about it. The reaction on social media has been mixed, but I think that not one reaction that I've seen says, "Oh my God, this is an amazing costume. This is the bestest costume ever." Even the James Gunn chills are not overly enthusiastic about this costume. And that's interesting. Now, if we're going to be measured about this, basically, the Superman Returns costume wasn't well received. The Man of Steel costume wasn't very well received. When I first saw the Superman Returns costume, I was fucking horrified. I'm not horrified about this, but the Superman Returns costume was horrifying. I got used to it eventually. The Man of Steel costume, I fell in love with it. I like the whole idea of not being able to see if he's wearing the red trunks or not. Something I forgot to mention to you guys, to talk about with you, is the fact that it looks like that David is wearing the red trunks. Now, if you know me well enough, you'll know I don't really care if he wears red trunks or doesn't wear red trunks. Although I did get kind of excited when I could see a little smidgen of the red trunks. I also mentioned yesterday that it's very, very difficult to judge this costume without David standing up. But there's another parameter here to kind of think about. Is this the actual Superman costume? Is this one of many multiversal Supermen that David Corenswet is going to play? We all remember the rumours about Bizarro and Ultraman. So I think it's absolutely obvious there's more than one Superman in this movie. I expect to see another photo of David in the costume, probably at the end of principal photography, of him standing up and looking superhero-ish, because there's been some complaints that he's not smiling. He doesn't look very, very superheroic. So it's an interesting costume because it's not that far away from the Man of Steel costume in tone, in temper, in colour palette. It's definitely a little bit lighter. You could argue it looks like someone's vandalised the Man of Steel costume, with the greatest respect, by the way. I'm not trying to be funny or insulting. It looks like someone's kind of taken the Man of Steel costume and made certain alterations to it. I always said that this film, to me, in my opinion, wasn't going to have a huge budget. There was rumours of three or 400 million. No way. No film costs that kind of money, by the way. But this film isn't costing that. Warner Brothers don't have that money. They're in debt. I think around 120 million, and that's me being positive. It could be lower than that. It could be below 120 million. I don't believe this is a huge budgeted movie. But you can get a good film out of $120 million. You don't need a $250 million Superman movie anyway. And they've got to be careful because they don't really know how well or how badly this film's going to be. They can't judge the mood of the public anymore. As we saw last weekend with the Fall Guys, they thought that was a shoo-in, but it wasn't. That's why they're all crying in their echo chambers in the press, and all the movie Twitter people, this is the 60 billion reasons why this movie wasn't successful. And every reason they list isn't the film's fault and isn't the studio's fault. Or they blame marketing. Marketing is always the obvious thing to blame. Marketing isn't hypnosis. You can't force people to want to see something. You can encourage via your marketing. And this is what a costume reveal is. It's a form of marketing. It's actually a very important form of marketing because the general audience will be seeing this. Forget about what the stands and the fans are saying online and on social media. Think about the general audience. The norm is, what do they make of this costume? Well, he kind of looks like he's relaxing in a studio apartment while all hell is breaking loose outside. Don't forget, you can't really see it there behind me. But if I zoom in here, well, you can't see it, but I can. Sorry, no editing software, no flashy stuff like the others. Sorry, it's just me. Very unprofessional. But anyway, so let's zoom in on this pink thing outside. I don't know if you can see it, and I don't think that you can, but yeah, if you can see there's a pink thing and it's shooting at something. So that's actually a very interesting element of this costume reveal. Now, let's take a closer look at David. His eyes seem to be temporarily closed. Is he pulling the boots up? And by the way, I do like the boots, as I mentioned yesterday. Or is he pulling them down? Very, very interesting. This might not be our Superman. I believe every version of Superman in this film, and I think there's going to be a multiple amount of Superman in this film, if you ask me, will be played by David Corenswet. Now, it would be amazing if we could have Brandon Routh and Tyler Hoechlin and, Tom Welling and, Henry Cavill and all of them. Unlikely, but who knows? But definitely prepare yourselves for more than one Superman in this movie. So I'm not totally convinced this is the main Superman costume. We do have the Kingdom Come S-Shield. Now, it may not be a traditional S-Shield. It's taken me some time to get used to it. I don't dislike it, by the way. And by the way, I'm not jumping up and down saying this is the bestest suit ever, but I'm not saying this is terrible. You've got people and sites asking us to say, what's the better costume? The Man of Steel one or this one? I don't want to go into that. I don't want to get into a spitting contest about which one is better. But obviously, every new Superman will be compared to the last one, which was Henry Cavill. Someone's saying, stop comparing them. Well, everyone's going to compare David to Christopher Reeve, because that's what's done. I mean, Christopher Reeve is exactly. Anyway, if we zoom in to this S-Shield, it's the Kingdom Come, but it's covering his chest, which is something we've always liked. I mean, one of the worst S-Shields we got, again, was the Superman Returns costume. Hate to be shitting on it. Very small S-Shield, very short cape as well. I think we all love a longish cape and a big S-Shield covering the chest. So it's all right. As I say, it isn't a bad... The thing is, let me be clear about this. This isn't a terrible costume. I don't think it is. Now, some people are not very happy with the collar around the neck. Again, this is not a problem. Some people kind of making the point, how does he hide it under his shirt? Well, quite easily. If he just lifts his collars up on his shirt a bit, if I wore it, I could hide it. So that isn't a big deal either, obviously. I don't know what he does with the cape when he's wearing the costume. But it's interesting, James Gunn being James Gunn, he may actually show us David in the movie changing into the costume, practically. It's something that James Gunn could do, because these are questions that fans have always asked. Has he changed so quickly? We know he's got super speed and he can do that. Anyway, so the cape does look very, very long, which is something that we really, really like. We don't like, as I say, we don't like short capes. And if you look at the legs, it's very, very bright blue. It's very bright blue. It's lighter blue than the Henry Cavill costume, that's for sure. Now, it does have some very, very interesting markings. Now, I'm not that up on the Kryptonian language and scripture. Sorry, but I'm not. But they do look like very, very interesting markings. And we've got to make the assumption they're Kryptonian. But are they from the House of El? Also, something very interesting here. The top left-hand side of the S-Shield does look a little bit dirty, like he's already been in a fight. So could he be taking off this costume instead of putting it on? Now, let's go back to the spaceshipy thing or whatever it is, shooting out at something. Now, let me get a little closer look, because it seems to have a bit of a head on it, doesn't it? Like a duck. So let's get a bit closer. It's very, very difficult. But yeah, it actually looks like, instead of a spaceship, that actually looks like a being. That looks like a form of maybe intelligence, or maybe something that Lex Luthor has created in a lab. Very, very interesting. Could that be something that's helping? Or could Superman be on another planet? I mean, it's unlikely because he's sitting on some kind of armchair. But yeah, for the first time, actually, while I'm doing this video, I've noticed, I'm sure the other reactions, I'm sure Boba Talks is all over this and has noticed these things. Well, I'm not quick on the uptake. But yeah, this thing that's shooting out, this pinky thing, does look like to have, it looks like an animal, doesn't it? So that's very, very interesting. So there's no kind of, we don't know what's going on here, but people have criticised that there's all hell breaking loose and Superman's either pulling his boots up or down and looks very, very relaxed. Well, again, at the end of the day, we don't know who this is. This could be Ultraman, who doesn't care who's in danger outside. This could be Bizarro, who's a bit slow on the uptake, a bit like me. So look, I think it's an interesting picture, for sure. As I say, some people are saying it's not very good marketing. You know, it's an interesting situation. I think what's interesting about this costume as well, it looks very alien. Now, what's interesting about this, because I don't mind a Superman costume looking alien, the Man of Steel costume looks very, very alien. It got criticised for looking very, very alien, didn't it? But, as I say, it's funny because I do feel that everyone who was, shilling James Gunn thought he was going to give us, even before the Kingdom Come logo was teased, I think everyone thought traditional costume, red trunks that we're getting, but something that's not this. So this isn't, in my opinion, this isn't a terrible costume. As I said earlier, he needs to stand up. We need to see it properly. Some of you will be thinking, oh my God, a Superman costume, what's all the fuss about it? A superhero costume. Yeah, everyone's got their windmills, right? Everyone's got their things that they get excited about. And this was always going to be a big deal. But as I say, be very, very aware and be wary and be careful. This may not be Superman, our Superman suit. This could be, no, I don't think this is Bizarro. It can't be Ultraman, can he? Because he's got the wrong insignia. Or maybe in this universe, this Superman has the Kingdom Come, Fleischer Studios kind of insignia. Maybe. I'm not too sure. I mean, I go back to this film being called Superman Legacy. And then the legacy being cut out. It was like he was giving us a clue, then taking it away from us. So very, very interesting. As I say, I'm pretty certain, as I said earlier, that there's going to be more than one version of Superman in this movie, which means different costumes. It could also be that Superman himself has different costumes. Now, there's been a varied amount of criticisms about this costume, but as I say, this is nothing new. Every new costume, every new superhero costume, especially a Superman costume, is heavily criticised. They didn't like the Returns one, they didn't like the Man of Steel one. So this is, this is nothing new. But considering all these, shills are saying, James Gunn is the bestest director ever, and, they always say, they repeatedly say they trust James Gunn, I don't think anyone was expecting this costume. Was I expecting this costume? It's funny, actually, when I went on my Instagram after I had a shower yesterday, I saw the costume come up and I blanked off. I didn't realise it was a reveal. And I went, oh yeah, oh my God, he's only just posted, he's only gone and actually done it after all this time. And I found it funny because I didn't actually knock in that we had this big reveal. And maybe that's a little bit going around as well. Everyone's talking about it, but people don't know if they should be excited or not. I think that's a weird thing about this picture. I think the kind of, the interesting thing is people don't know what to think of it. And I'm kind of looking at it and I'm zooming in on it and I'm thinking, do you know what? It isn't a bad costume. It isn't a traditional costume. And I think maybe that's part of it. People expected something a little bit more traditional from James Gunn. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't dislike it. But I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? It does look very alien. It's something, in fact, that you may expect him to be wearing if he was living on Krypton. Interesting. Now, if we look at the back here, there are kind of buildings that you would kind of find on Earth, so it doesn't look like. I was thinking maybe he's still on Krypton for some reason. But that's not viable, is it? You see, we don't even know if Krypton is destroyed in this universe or what's going on in this universe. We know he's been Superman for about a year, according to James Gunn. So, and something else we haven't spoken about away from the costume is the spit curl. He has got the spit curl, but if you look, this is very interesting, because where is the spit curl? Because normally the spit curl comes around here. Yeah, excuse that horrible bump on my head. It's all right, I could have had it taken away years ago, but I can't be bothered for the cosmetic surgery. Anyway, yeah, he doesn't seem to have it in the centre of the forehead, which is also, maybe, that could say something that this is not Superman. And it's interesting, isn't it? Actually, and nobody's thought about this, about his eyes being shut as well. Is this some kind of a clone? Could it be a clone? Because that's something that's been hinted at in the press as well. So I'm not convinced this is Superman or this is Superman's costume. So it's very interesting. But, again, I don't hate this costume. But James Gunn doesn't like to give away the plots of his movies. And, you know, normally these days they don't really like doing that. So we don't really know what this film's going to be about. We know there's kind of 5 Justice League members. Are they really Justice League? Is there a Justice League in this universe? But there's, you know, 5 other DC characters in this movie. You could suggest by saying that there's a lack of faith in the character to do that. And some people just don't know what to do with Superman unless there's other kind of supers around him. It's one of those things, I'm afraid. But this picture, let's be clear, doesn't put me off this film. I'm not disappointed in the picture. I am intrigued. As I said yesterday, it doesn't jump at you and say the best costume I've ever seen. I think the Christopher Reeve costume is perfect because it's so basic. It lets the body do the talking, and it works. It's a great costume. This is, you know, these days with Superman Returns, Man of Steel, and now this one, they do over-elaborate on the costume. They don't take a comic book design and just make that. And I mean, there's so many comic book designs that they could do. But they don't just take one and say, let's do that one. I personally would prefer that. But this isn't a bad costume. But I'm not convinced this is the costume. And I'm not convinced this is our Superman either. So, you know, at the end of the day, as I said yesterday, you can only judge on what you're seeing there. And I get a lot of people saying, you know, oh, you know, you don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Not to me. But people seem to be trying to police people's opinions. Everyone has every right to have an opinion on this. You're going to be spending your own hard-earned money to go to the cinema to see this movie, hopefully, and, you know, you have a right to your opinion. As long as you're constructive and you don't take it too far. I don't think there's any need to argue about this costume either. I've lost the picture. Shall I put it back on? Yeah, why not? Because it's great to have it there, isn't it, as well? But it's an exciting thing to have this costume to finally be revealed. But again, be very careful. This might not be the costume. I always felt he would reveal the costume at the end of Principal Photography. I think he will reveal the costume at the end of Principal Photography. I think David will definitely be standing in a more heroic pose, definitely be smiling. And if you're complaining he's not smiling, you know, I don't think James has used this as marketing. I think James has used this to give us a little bit of a clue about what's going on within the film. He's teasing us. He's playing with us a little bit. So, yeah, I'm not convinced this is the costume, and I'm not convinced this is even our Superman, the main Superman from the film. So, keep that in mind. But it's an interesting design. Not really that far away from the Man of Steel one. It is different. Absolutely, it is different. I'm not trying to say it's not different. But it looks alien, like the Man of Steel one, which is interesting. It's difficult for like James Gunn fans because they've been going around criticising the Cavill costume a lot. It's alien, it's too dark, blah blah blah, and they kind of get a similar kind of take where this is really alien. I wouldn't say it's too alien. I don't think you can be too alien. But I think the beauty of Superman and the best costume, and it's the Christopher Reeve one, is because it's so simplistic, like the original design in the comics, in Action Comics #1. It's a basic costume. It doesn't look alien. I mean, and there's something else. I mean, are you trying to sell me, James, are you trying to sell it to me that Martha Kent made this costume? Because I'm not buying it. And that's why I don't think that this costume is the costume that our main Superman will be wearing. That's my theory. That's how I feel about it. I could be wrong. I could be absolutely wrong. And, you know, it's great to take L's. It's great to be humble enough to say, do you know what? I was wrong about that. I said Barbie was going to be a flop. I was wrong about that. You know, we don't always have to be right, you know. And it's important to say, sometimes, as I've said before, I thought this, and now I think something different. It's funny when you're talking about something on social media and someone brings up an old tweet or an old post and says, this you? Yes, I thought that then, and now I don't. I think this. You haven't caught me out. You ain't pulled my pants down. I admit it. I have different takes. I've had about 60 different takes on this, you know, on this costume since it was revealed by James Gunn. And it's okay. And sometimes you examine yourself and you think, oh, but you said this, but you said that. But that's all right. You can have different takes. I'm like an old woman. You know, I change my mind constantly. But as I said yesterday, need to see him standing up. Not convinced this is the main Superman costume. I wouldn't be surprised if either there's many Supermen or there's different costumes that he wears for different situations, which could be a tad, I suppose, controversial. Someone else said yesterday, oh, this looks like a Guardians of the Galaxy costume. Well, it is a Guardians of the Galaxy costume designer who did the costume. I think it's James's person he normally uses. I don't think the design is problematic. I think whoever's designed this, and look, the way this looks is on James. James wanted the costume to look a certain way. And he's told the costume designer, maybe he's worked with the costume designer, maybe the costume designer's made some suggestions that have gone into the design of the costume. Not sure. But it's not a horrible costume. It's just a different costume. And different doesn't mean bad. But the traditionalists out there will be as disappointed as they were with the Man of Steel costume. But there was already people saying, wow, he's wearing the red trunks. Be very, very aware again. If this isn't the main Superman, he may end up not wearing the red trunks. But I don't know. I don't want to send you down a false direction thinking this isn't the main Superman or this isn't the main costume. I'm just not convinced that it is. But as I say, you know, in terms of costumes, it's not bad. I think the Man of Steel costume was great. There is an over-elaboration with Superman costumes today, as I've already said. They do seem to like to complicate them and have these, you know, have a bit of Kryptonian markings on them. It's not a bad thing. I still think Reeves' simplistic costume, basic costume, is the best one. But we live in different times, and these are just modernised costumes. So I really like the Man of Steel costume, and I think this is interesting. I actually think this, after a while, will actually grow on me. Because it's so different. But as I say, I don't think this is a bad costume. And I'm not one of those who gets triggered if he's wearing trunks or not. I saw a few people on X-Twitter yesterday. Oh, look, he's wearing the trunks. You know, like Snyder fans, diehard Snyder fans, because I love what Zack did with DC, but I'm not a here for Zack person, as you all know. Snyder fans think it's against some law for Superman to wear trunks, just because Snyder's Superman didn't wear trunks. Now, Zack claimed they tried trunks, it just didn't feel right. Because a lot of people feel the trunks are dated. I don't think they're dated. I don't think they're dated at all. all you have to do, I've always said it, one of the things I did like about the Superman Returns costume was the trunks, because they were a little bit smaller. They weren't big. Christopher Reeve's ones are really big, but it worked for the time, right? I think Christopher Reeve had such a great body. He just looked good in that costume. He made it look good. And he didn't let the costume do the talking. The costume did the talking. His body did the talking, because he didn't go over the top with the way he moved. But yeah, it's not a bad costume, in my opinion. And I'd love to know your comments. I mean, listen, the problem is with all these opinions, you don't know what are genuine, because there's people who hate James Gunn. There's people who love James Gunn. So he could have, Mr. Blobby come out as Superman, and David could be wearing the Mr. Blobby costume. And people would be going, bestest costume ever! So, you just don't know, do you? But I've been honest with you. I don't mind the suit. I think it's okay. I think it's different. I think it's interesting. As I say, I'm not going to say to you this is the most amazing costume ever, but I think it certainly has a lot of potential. That's what I'll say to you. It's got potential. It's got potential for us to get used to it. It is not a bad costume. It is not the Superman Returns costume, right? And some people have said, well, some people, not me, have said it's worse than the Superman and Lois costume, because the first original costume that Tyler wore seemed like it's something you just wrap around you. It seemed a bit loose on him as well, wasn't very tight. I didn't mind that costume either. It wasn't the best because of the loose fitting and the way it was, but I didn't think it's terrible either. And by the way, it was a costume made for a television production, but I think they've actually improved the Superman and Lois costume as well. I don't think there's a really, really bad. I think the Superman Returns costume is the worst. I think the Kirk Allen one wasn't great back in the day, but then they didn't really care about designs of costumes. Neither the fans. I think it was a different world. We're so spoilt now, and we all seem to be just obsessed with these things. And it is an interesting thing to talk about, don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend I hate this costume. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I love this costume. But I will say the most curious thing for me is this studio apartment that Superman's in. What's that on the floor? There seems to be a purple light on the floor as well, which is interesting. Or is that coming out from what's going on outside? Now, some people have said that what's going on outside looks like AI. I don't know. All I know that James Gunn said this picture was taken in camera. So I have to take his word for it. Why say it if it's not true? So I'm going to say that this is not AI, even the outside. It's interesting. I mean, this could be a moment. I mean, that outside could easily even be a matte painting. So I don't know. So, yeah. So you've got Superman sitting down. There's all hell breaking loose outside, or so it seems. And he's just sitting there, getting dressed. He seems a bit battle weary as well. It doesn't look overly damaged, the costume, does it? It does look like it does seem to be. Is there burn marks? Are they burn marks around the S? I'm not too sure if they are or not. What I'm trying to do with this costume is not shit on it. Is not say it's the greatest costume ever. Because I don't want to shit on it, because I don't hate it. For once in my life, I don't want to be an arsehole. I want to be measured, right? And obviously, when we see the film, we can be the judge, jury, and executioner. That, my friends, is what it's all about. But thus far, my assessment of this costume is it's okay. And I believe it's going to grow on me, and I think I may even like it further when he's standing up. But, I'll go back to what I've already said. Not overly convinced this is his costume. And I think he's playing multiple versions of this character from the multiverse, different timelines. That's what I believe. And as I say, I could be absolutely wrong. But I think we should still be excited. I don't think a picture should put you off from seeing the movie. But as I say, it is all about the general audience and normies. They're the ones who need convincing to go and see the movie. We, us geeks, us nerds, are going to be there. It's really exciting for us. it's really exciting for me. So I'd say I'd give this costume around what? I'd give this about 3.5 out of 5 because I don't, as I say, I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's different.